Thank you all so much for joining us this afternoon for our talk on NG9-1-1 collaboration, cooperation, and collection with Scott Trapolino. Guys, we really appreciate you participating in this virtual conference with us. We've had a lot of great content. We're going to continue to provide that content. I want to remind you guys that this session is being recorded. So if you missed something or you want to refer back to something, we'll have the recordings available for you to review. And also, if you have a question throughout the presentation for Scott, please leverage the Q&A section down towards the bottom of your screen. We'll be moderating that throughout, and Scott has elected to take questions as they come in versus waiting till the very end of the presentation. So please, this should be, we want this to be as interactive and as engaging as possible. So please use that Q&A section. And with that, I'm happy to introduce a good friend of mine, long-term friend, Scott Trapolino. I'm going to let Scott kind of introduce himself. He does a lot better job than I do. So Scott, take it away, brother.
Hey, how's everybody doing today? It's actually beautiful outside today for the first time in a couple of weeks. It's kind of hard to be sitting inside and sitting down. But today I'm going to kind of just come in and kind of explain to you about what we're doing in Mississippi, kind of a grassroots movement with collaboration, cooperation, and then some really cool ways to do data collection, whether you're a GIS professional, a dispatcher, or just a first responder. So here, to get it started, I'll kind of introduce myself. If you notice, Captain Scott Trapolino, I actually am captain on the Eudora Fire Department. I've been there for around 11 years. Before that, I was with 2 other fire departments. So I've been doing this about 14, 15 years. And really the reason I got into doing first response is because I was making maps for a gentleman right after Katrina, and I didn't really know how to break down the lines of communication, you know, which is a big issue for everybody nowadays, especially if you're specialized in a certain field. So what I kind of did was I took 2 steps back. I talked to my boss at the time, and he's like, man, we got a great volunteer fire department. He's like, why don't you go and volunteer? So I did, and I fell in love with it. And I went in as a professional firefighter for a while, and ended up leaving. I do GIS full-time right now for Canopy Spatial, and I am, you might as well call it full-time. We have a half full-time, half volunteer fire department in Eudora, Mississippi, where I live. So that's kind of me where I'm at right now. With Canopy Spatial, we actually do a lot of 911 implementations, but I do a lot of work. Since I do a lot of work with volunteer fire department, I also do a lot of volunteer work with the organizations in the state to spread the word for next generation 911. So in this, I just want to go ahead and let y'all know, a lot of these slides, I'm kind of going to go through a little fast, but you'll actually get this presentation after the fact if you'd like it. I know that, thank you very much to Craig and Jason and all the guys at DataMark for putting this on. But a lot of this is, this presentation is kind of geared towards having a collective of GIS professionals, 911 professionals, and first responders all in the same room. So if it gets to a point, I'm going to kind of brush over some of these definitions and terminology and kind of get to the meat and potatoes. The whole thing is us doing this grassroots movement, helping people that don't have the funding, don't have the resources to actually go out and collect geospatial data to put into their next gen 911 system. We're actually going to kind of show you how I'm doing that. I've had several people tell me it's the poor man's GIS, but I think it's just allocating resources the best way you can to fit the need. So we're going to go over key terminology. You know, how will next gen 911 affect local professionals? Because a lot of local GIS professionals have a huge disconnect with not just terminology, but with, they're like, we give them point addresses, we give them street center lines. You know, they don't understand how the data plays a role in, especially a legacy system, much less next gen 911. So this education, we're pushing education every day. So I used to be an instructor, so I kind of like the cooperation or collaboration while we're talking. So if you have any questions whatsoever, please don't hesitate to stop me, and Drew will come in there and actually post your question so we can, I'm sure several other people will have the same question. So the next thing we're going to go into is field data collection and methodology. I'm going to show you how everyone has an 811. So Mississippi 811 really took a step out and put themselves out there and said, man, we need to protect critical infrastructure data in the state of Mississippi. How can we do that more effectively and efficiently? And they said, oh my God, what about this next gen 911 stuff? Point addresses, street center lines. We'll be able to provide all of these utilities with better location data. Therefore, they will be able to go out and not dig up other people's utilities. So, and we're actually going to talk about that a little bit more here later. And then educate everyone. You know, and I'm going to kind of tell you how we're putting together a statewide needs assessment and throughout the state if you wanted to kind of do the same thing with your state. Let's see. So next gen 911 definition, a lot of people should know that. If you want to read over it, by all means, look at it. We're going to skip forward so we can actually get to some of the good stuff. Terminology. You would be surprised. I guess if you're coming from the dispatch side or you're coming from the 911 side, you know what a PSAP is, an MSAG. When I was going through the fire academy, I had to know what that information was. They actually taught that to us as we were going through. So I knew what a public safety answering point was. You know, I didn't necessarily know what an MSAG was, but I knew what a CAD was, and I knew what the alley was. This is something that everybody should be familiar with. I mean, this is the old legacy. This is our MSAG. We're still running off of this for every single one of our dispatches in the state of Mississippi. So I put this in here because a lot of first responders have never seen this. They don't understand what the low and the high and the community mean and how they're implemented into the road center lines, much less the point addresses themselves. So EZNet, that's something that I just started learning about from the last 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, and just kind of got thrown in. I said, what's an EZNet and how is that tied into GIS, you know? So we're going to keep going here. Emergency call routing functions, location validation functions. And this is normally, the slides that I'm showing right here are normally a half a day class. Sit down, really dig into each one of these terms so that everybody knows it. And then we'll throw out, normally I'll throw out terms that firefighters use or the first responders use. And then we'll get into the, I guess, you know, we'll get into what GIS people, you know, the terms and functions that GIS people use. So just to give you a brief summary, like, so I know everyone here, or hopefully everyone here would know what an ESN is. Well, ESNs, we built an ESN just, I guess, in the last 10 years. I worked for a local municipality and we built out our ESN and we were like, well, wouldn't it be cool? Let's put everything together, put our sub response areas, put everything into one GIS layer, right? Concise, one layer. Well, come to find out now, if you come down the, you know, emergency service boundaries for next gen 911, they can't all be in one layer anymore. They all have to be in separate layers. So we actually have several places that I've worked with. We've had to tear that back apart. Just to kind of give you an example, this is a map that I created for first responders using a carry map, which we're going to talk about here shortly. But if you look, you know, you got your engine, your tanker, your rescue. If you went further on, we have one for EMS, emergency medical services, EMR, and they have the run order. The main reason I created this map, it was not necessarily in thoughts for next gen 911, is as much as I had, and anybody that's a first responder or dispatcher understands this, and you're gonna laugh a little inside, but when I first came to DeSoto County, which I was GIS administrator there for a while, the problem was I was also on the fire department. So being on the fire department, I got all the calls because they would call me and say the map's wrong. And then the dispatchers would call the fire chiefs and say, no, you're wrong. And so nobody had the same information. So kind of I put this map in here to just kind of remind me to tell everybody to, you know, if you give the information that you have in dispatch to all your first responders and vice versa, it helps you keep the information updated and maintained. So within this map, which I'll demo for you here in a minute, or one of these maps, we had problems where the point addresses were not matching, the street names didn't match the sign, which didn't match the GIS, which didn't match the MSAG. So what we did was we empowered, and I like to use that word, we empowered all the first responders. You know, there's a couple hundred first responders in the county here. We empowered them with all the dispatch information. So if they found problems with it, they were able to send in information back to the dispatch captain to say, hey, look, this street name is really not this. We need to do some research and find out whether we need to change the street sign, whether we need to update dispatch. Same thing with point addresses, hydrants, any critical infrastructure that a first responder needs. Going next here, GIS data. The GIS people listening are gonna be like, oh God. Required data layers. If you don't know the required data layers to properly run a next-gen 911, or your road center lines, your point addresses, your PSAT boundaries, your emergency service boundaries, and your provisioning boundaries. So each one of these has to have specific information in it to be able to run through your ECRF and your LVF to actually function correctly. And we're not going to break into that today, but here, let's go in here. Another thing that's really good is a street name A-list table or a landmark name part table. I've seen those go both ways. I've seen some 911 systems where they're actually putting the landmark information within the point address data itself and updating it on a regular basis. And I've seen it where they're just linking the table. If you have say you have businesses that are coming in and you update that once a year, they're taking that information and pushing it back out to their 911 system so that the actual point address is linked to a landmark, which could be McDonald's, Wendy's, you know, or hair salon. This is something that was, this kind of started our grassroots movement. So about 4 years ago, we came in and had an issue where we, as GIS professionals, were begging, needed it. We wanted a standard. Everybody was adhering to different standards for not just 911 data, but all our geospatial data. We have a great repository at the state level, and you can access that through Maris. But the issue we had was, how do we update and maintain critical infrastructure layers at the state level, not only for census data, but for the Secretary of State's office, all kinds of stuff, voting. So what we did was we come back, I guess we came back about a year and a half ago, 3 years ago it started. We had a little roundtable meeting with GIS professionals. We said, yeah, we're gonna jump on this. A year and a half went by. Everybody knows how this goes because it's a grassroots movement. Nobody's forcing us to do it. It's not our job, but we know it's a necessity. So we kind of got kicked into high gear, I guess about a year ago. And I want to give props to Oklahoma with Charles Brady and a few others. I'd like to give props to Kansas, Arkansas, Tennessee. There were several other states. And what we did was, why reinvent the wheel, right? We took what all these other states, and some of these states were so generous. They were like, we're just going to send you our Word document. Just cut and paste what you need, put it in there, change the names, fit it however it best fits you to suit your state. And we also took into account the NENA standards. Every standard that was out there, we reviewed it all. We had meetings, and we came up with this great document. And so this is more for, I guess this section of the presentation is more for the dispatchers. A lot of dispatchers that come in, they don't understand spatial components at all. So we wanted to make sure within our standards, we put in definitions so that they would be able to understand. So points, lines, polygons, and then we explained what those were within there. And then I'll come into a dispatch and I'll show them what's a point, what's a line, what's a polygon. Here's your boundary, your parcel boundary. This is kind of, I guess this is our schema that we came up with, and we have changed it, but for the most part, we adopted almost everything that NENA has in their existing standard. Here's our place type schema. Here's our streets. And then here's the information that I'm showing, you know, Ripley Fast Stop, gas station, roller skating rink, showing them how GIS data could help them identify stuff, because a lot of dispatches that we have right now, they don't have the money to have a CAD system that has data internally. They're using Google, and Google's not always right, especially in rural areas. Well, 95% of Mississippi is very rural. So go a little bit further here. Let's go to Mississippi 911. So 811 came in, like I told you before, and they came in and they said, look, we need accurate, up-to-date GIS data to protect our excavators and the general public as a whole. So they threw together some funding, and then they got with myself and several other GIS professionals in the state that and put together a project to where we go out, we train the existing 911 system, or the 911 employees. So here, like, we did a pilot study last year before last. It took about 2 months to complete. And we went out and collected all the street center lines and point addresses. So the lessons we learned from there is, I went out myself with an 811 representative, and we rode every road in the county, verified every address, then came back and did the comparisons with the MSAG, and did all that manually, and saw how tasking that was. But what we found out was, the lessons learned is, we didn't have a representative from the county. So when it comes to updating and maintaining that data, we don't want just a snapshot. We want all the local PSAPs to update and maintain their own data and keep pushing that up to the state level, whether it's through 811, but also through the coordinating council, the Mississippi GIS Coordinating Council. So from now on, we actually have a representative drive every road, because they know the roads better. They know if there's a bridge out. They know if there are any structures down certain roads. So it's actually a time-saving and money-saving venture. Plus, they get to see how we go out and field collect all this GIS data, and they see the value in the GIS data. And I have several of them, since they've gone out. They're not GIS people, they're EMA directors, they're 911 coordinators, they're dispatchers. They want to learn how to do GIS, because they didn't realize how applicable it was and how important it was to their job every day. So that's how the grassroots movement kind of started. And here, I'll go ahead and show you. We've actually trained 3 field teams now, and they're doing really, really well. We're currently doing 1, 2, 3 counties at the moment. And here, to kind of show you this next one, this is kind of where we're at right now with Mississippi. We have 37 of the 82 counties. Actually, we have 39 of the 82 counties. I need to update this slide. And we have 69 of the 116 PSAPs done throughout the entire state. So slowly but surely, and I mean, this is a grassroots movement, like I said. So we're using GIS professionals that most of the time already have a full-time job. They're coming out to make ends meet, make a little extra money, and they're coming out to work with their adjacent counties to just help them out and show them how to create and make data. Where are we on time? We've got about 9 minutes left. So the history of the disconnected field data collection, you know, we went from paper to a GeoPDF to a Venza PDF. And if you're a GIS person, you kind of know where I'm at. Then we use GIS Collector, and where I've come to find now is CarryMap actually meets all the needs so far, because we have to have we're a very disconnected state. We are not connected in a lot of ways as far as through cell service. So I can't go in and use an online ArcGIS Collector application. And a lot of times it's restrictive because most of the counties I work with don't have GIS software to begin with. So our methodology here is we go and find whatever data is available. We build a CarryMap application, which I'm going to show you here in a second. And then we either get in the field with the first responders and the 911 coordinators, or we give them that information and let them go out and collect it themselves and then bring it back to us, and we help them post-process. So 811 has 3 GIS professionals right now, and they're actually straightening roads. They are adjusting point addresses. They are working with locals to help update and maintain that data, as well as tying back into the GIS professionals in the state through the professional organizations we have. So this is just gives you a little bit about our concepts of how we brought it together, our collaboration coming with 811, local government assistance, people that never thought that GIS data, that they had GIS data. We had one county we went into that was really good. The electric power associations had meter data. Well, that meter data is pretty accurate. And then they were willing, 811 was willing to work with them to where they gave us the point addresses of the meters, and we had to promise them that we would not keep the same format or schema, and that we would not keep the points where they were. We were actually going to readjust all the points to the center of the structure, and then we were going to use NG9-1-1 to data schema to put it back. But then after that, we shared that data back with the electric power associations, which they were super happy to get that information back, because and a lot of times the tax assessor would have new imagery flown for tax assessing purposes, but they wouldn't know to share that information with an electric power association in their area. They wouldn't know to share updated parcel information. So we've been like, it's a slow moving process, but this grassroots movement has really been inspiring to me to see people reach out that wouldn't normally talk to someone else and say, hey, I have some data that you might need for 911, and I might have some data that you might need to protect critical infrastructure. So we're this upcoming year, I think we're hoping to do 5 or 6 more counties, and if we get more funding either from the state or from other entities, we could potentially do 8 to 10. And that's with using part-time people and pulling everything together. So our current status is we have a statewide 911 authority, we have a 911 coordinator, and they're housed at the Mississippi Emergency Management Agency. And what happens is, so MEMA is actually coordinating all those efforts right now. I'm not going to talk about what the state level is doing because we have a really good state panel that's coming up later this afternoon. So stay tuned if you want to jump on that. I know several of the panelists, and it's going to be a great talk. Let's keep going real quick. I really wanted to show you these key collaborators, right? So we got the GIS professionals from the state, the E911 coordinators, the emergency managers, the Mississippi Coordinating Council gave us their blessing. And this was all grassroots. These are just people like me who really care about first response as well as dispatch and 911. And so we went back to them and we asked, so what do we need for a next gen 911 needs assessment at the local level? Because we don't know what PSAPs have what. So what we did was we came in and we came up with these questions, and you'll actually have access to this later. I know I'm coming up close to the end of the session. You'll have access to these questions, but if you see other questions, we're always looking at anything else we can add to this. We haven't deployed it yet at the local level to all the PSAPs, but we are looking at doing this. So, you know, what's the most pressing budgetary constraints you have? Use the comments to explain. You know, what company is your communication provider? Does your PSAP have the capability to receive text to 911? And, you know, and if they had questions or couldn't answer them to the fullest, we have people with the 911 Coordinators Association that's willing to reach out to their adjacent communities and help them understand what Next Gen 911 is. So we're really pushing the education part in Mississippi right now. But list the number of dispatch consoles you have, what operating system you're running on. And these are just a few of the questions that we've kind of come into play to push out. But once we have all this information, we'll know what GIS data is available. You know, we're asking for everybody to send in what they have. So we'll see all the different legacy schemas that we have so we can put it together. And then training and education as the whole. And I have to give props to DataMark. They've come out to the state of Mississippi multiple times on their dime to work with other agencies within the state to put on educational workshops. And we're trying to get some other stuff pushed out. right now. Does anybody have any questions? Let me show you one more thing. I know we've got 2 more seconds. Let me see if I can pull this up and show you how this really, let me
Hey,
see.
Scott, I actually do have a question, and it's related to carry map.
Go ahead, that's what I'm pulling up right now.
As you've leveraged some of these open source platforms, is there any concern about security? Because
And yeah,
you're
security is
using
not
these open
necessarily
data set.
because we're not putting, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead and finish.
Oh, no. Now the data that I'm giving back out, right? So everybody has different codes. We have a code white. We have a code for COVID-19. If somebody, and all of that is coming in through dispatch, they map that internally, but that is not given back out to the first responders. So if you're looking at the screen right here, this is essentially, let me show you the first responder map. This is the EMA administrative map. So these maps are actually loaded on everybody's phone, all your first responders, and they're able to come in and turn on major waterways. They're turn on supervisor districts. They could turn on flood zones. Oh, this is the administrative map. They can turn on high hazard dams. But the cool thing about this, if you go in here and search, and I type in, for a first responder, this is super fast. So if I don't have Google, right, I'm a first responder, I type in 250 on my phone and hit enter, it automatically gives me every address. Or if there was a county road 250, you could scroll down within the data set itself. And so I can immediately click on it. It brings me to the structure. I see where I'm at. I can actually go back and look and see what fire district I'm in. The first responder map doesn't have this many layers in it. It only has about 6 or 7.
I'm going to interrupt you for a minute because we are at our time limit. I'll give it about 10 seconds if anybody's got any more questions. Please use the Q&A. I definitely want to be respectful of everybody's time and give them enough for the next session. Scott, thank you so much for hopping on with us today. Guys, Scott's information's up there. If you have any questions, please reach out to him directly. You can also find me. My name is Drew Fiorinelli, and I'm with Datamark. Please enjoy the rest of the virtual conference. Scott, we really appreciate your time, man.
Appreciate it. Y'all have a good one. Thank you.
See you guys.